My name is Tyler Myros, and I'm a developer advocate here at SailPoint. In this talk, we'll talk about getting started with the SailPoint CLI. So first things first, what is a CLI and who is it meant for? The SailPoint CLI stands for Command Line Interface, and it's a terminal-based tool to help you interact with your Identity Security Cloud tenant through a command line. So this provides you a text-based environment to run operations known as commands to interact with your tenant. So this tool is meant for you if you don't really necessarily want to go into the UI and click through a couple pages to get the information you're looking for. This tool is meant for you if you want to get started quickly and run a command and get the information you're looking for right away. So first things first, how do I install it? I'm going to bring up developer.sailpoint.com here on my screen, and I'm going to go to documentation, Identity Security Cloud, and then tools, and then CLI. So this just shows us a little bit of a description again, but getting the CLI is the one I want to get to. So this shows you can install the CLI from the release page. We have installers for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. So I'm going to first go to the releases page here. And the latest release of the CLI is version 2.1.4. So let's go ahead and install that. So on my machine, I'm running a Mac. So if I go back here to developer.sailpoint.com, on Mac, we support Homebrew. And so you can do a brew tap SailPoint OSS and brew install SailPoint CLI. So that'll get the tap that stores our command line interface, and it'll go ahead and install it through Homebrew. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to open up my terminal here, clear that out, paste that in, and run that. And since I already have it installed, I just get a warning here that is already installed and up to date. If I wanted to reinstall, I could run brew, reinstall SailPoint CLI. But since it's already installed, I'm not going to do that. So let's verify that it is in fact installed. We'll do a sail-v, and there we go, version 2.1.4, and okay. So we have the CLI installed and validated that. Now let's configure it to talk to our tenant. So to configure it, we support a couple different ways here. We support environment variables. We support OAuth. You can log into your tenant as you normally would, and that'll grab the token from your tenant. Or you can do PAT credentials, client ID, client secret. So I'm going to go ahead and configure PAT credentials to authenticate. So I'm going to do that with sail-env. So actually, before I do that, I'm just going to run sail so we can see a little bit of an example output. So this should look very familiar to the documentation. And then we have our available commands. The one I'm going to start out with here is environment to get that configured. So let's go ahead and do that. Each command also has like an alias or a shorthand for environments. That's just env. And I may actually have an environment already in here. Let's see if that's true. I'll do sail-env list. And okay, I do. So I'm going to delete that so we can recreate that. Sail-env delete. And the name of the environment is devrel. Gives me a message. Maybe you typed in the name wrong, so it gives you an opportunity to say, that's not what I meant to do. But it is in this case, so I'm going to hit enter to continue, and it says environment successfully deleted. So we are all good there. I'm going to clear out my screen and configure it again. So I'll do sail-env create, and I'm going to specify the name again as devrel. So this will open kind of like an interactive utility to walk you through configuring. So I named my environment devrel in that create command. So it's going to take that as a suggested input for the tenant name. So your tenant name is typically something like, tenantname.identitynow.com. For me, it is in fact devrel.identitynow.com. So I can go ahead and hit enter. This next part, if you have a custom URL, if it's not identitynow.com, some clients have a custom domain, or we also have demo tenants that have a different domain. So here's where you could customize that and enter that in. For me, that's not the case. Mine is, in fact, just devrel.identitynow.com. So I can go enter. It wants a base URL. This also is entered in for me. If I don't change anything, it's just going to use devrel.api.identitynow.com. So that is, in fact, correct. I can go ahead and through that. Now I choose my authentication type. As I said before, right here we configure OAuth or PAT, but we also do support just configuring environment variables for the base URL, client secret, and client ID. Right now I'm going to use PAT, and it's asking me for my client token, so let me put that in. All right, and that was valid. And now the client secret, and there we go. Okay, so it says environment created successfully. You can change your authentication type at any time by running sailset-auth, or you can change your client ID and secret at any time by running sailset-pat. So our environment is created. We've downloaded it and created our environment. So I'm going to clear all this off here, and let's get started using. So what I'll start with, just a simple subcommand, transforms, and let's just see what is available in that command. So sail transform, any subcommand, you can just type -- help, and that'll get you kind of like a manual page for that command. So for transforms, we can create, delete, download, list, and update. So let's do a list. Sail transform list. And there we go. So right away, I get my name and ID of the transform. It doesn't list out the full transform, but that's okay. We can get another command here. If we do transform help again, download. So what I'm going to do next here is download all my transforms, and I'm gonna modify one and then update that in Identity Security Cloud. I'll delete the ones that I downloaded and modified, and then pull it down again to see that it did in fact change. So let's do that. So sail transform download. And it gives us a little info message there. Transforms downloaded successfully. The path is at transform_files. So if I do a little ls here, transform files, perfect. And there they all are. So the transforms are in JSON format. And let's go ahead. I'm going to do just list out here the create new.json. So there's an example transform right there. I'm just going to update the attribute name from the last name here to using the first underscore name. So to do that, I'm just going to do that here in the terminal. And I'll change it here to first name. Okay. So we changed our transform locally. Now we want that change to go to Identity Security Cloud. So I'll do sail transform. Let's look at update help. Okay, so it wants us to do sail transform update and pass in a file name. All right, perfect. So let's do sail transform update. The file is going to be that one we just changed, the create new.json. So if I run that, happens pretty quick there. Updating transform gives the ID of that transform that we updated. But let's see that that did in fact take place. So I'm going to remove those files. Make sure they're gone. Yep. And I want to download them again. So sail transform download. All right. And back into that directory. And we'll cat out that JSON. And there we go. It is in fact changed to first name. So that is in our tenant as well. The next thing I'll show is a newer subcommand for rules. So this command kind of came out of some of the CC DCOM APIs, some of our older APIs. You used to be able to list your rules in that. So I wanted to be able to, right now it requires you to call a couple different APIs to get that information back. I wanted you to be able to get this in the CLI really quickly. Maybe you needed the rule ID to attach to a source, and you just wanted that information right away. So to run that command, it will be, let's check out sail rule. Again, help will show us what is available. Right now, all we have is list and download. So I'll run list, sail rule list. And this is going to list both cloud and connector rules. We do have a subcommand here, or I'm sorry, a flag to do just cloud. So I can run that, and there are just my cloud rules. So you can run this command, grab your ID, and attach that right to the source. If you wanted connector rules, we do also have a flag for that. So if I add that to that, run it, there are just my connector rules. The next thing I'll show is downloading this. So another session later at Developer Days, we'll be talking about the rule development kit. So I'll be able to use this to download my rules to be able to develop those rules using the rule development kit. So that command looks like sail rule download. It acts much like the one for transforms. So I'll hit enter here for sail rule download. It'll go call that in the background and download my rules. And then those are going to be in rule files. And they are separated out into a cloud folder and a connector folder. And there they are. Let's just list one or show one out here. We'll do an Airtable. And so there's my XML for that rule. So I did, in fact, download that. All right, so that's rules. The next one I want to talk about is we have some reporting capabilities in the CLI. So maybe you want to run some reports about getting really any kind of search query that you want to run to get information back and get that report data. So we have reports. We can do that with sail report. And so you can do sail report. That'll open up an interactive kind of almost a UI in the CLI, and we can choose a report from that. So I'll go ahead and do that. And so we do have one template in here for you by default. It's called provisioning and security. So I'm going to click on that. So this, if you had more than one, which we'll show a little bit later here, they would show up in this list, and you can use the up and down arrow keys to navigate through those and select which one you want to run. So I'll run this one. And down here it says input days before today. So I'll do 90 days, for example. And so it went and talked to our tenant and ran the following queries. So the first one is provisioning events for the last 90 days. So it asked input days before today. This one's kind of like a dynamic query, and I'll show how that works in just a second. But it's getting provisioning events within the last 90 days. The second one here is user unlocks that happened for the last 90 days. So that, if you're familiar with the search endpoint, either in the UI or through an API, this query string should look pretty familiar to you. And that's all it's doing, is just calling search with that predefined query string. So let's look at adding our own report template. So you can do this by specifying a custom template directory. And you can do that by adding a new environment variable. So I'm going to show you that environment variable here. I think it's sail report. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I have in my terminal the environment variable set for sail report templates path, and then I have the path to that report template. So I'm going to copy that path to go there, and I'm going to open this up in VS Code. That is probably super small, so let's make that a little bit bigger. All right. And so let's take a look at what the report template looks like. So I'm going to go back into developer.sailpoint.com. I'm already in the CLI area under Tools. If I click on Templates and hit Report, here we go. This is the example report that's already included in the CLI. So we give it a name, a description, the variables, if there are any. The one we showed you, the prompt was days before today. So you see it asks you, if I go back there, input days before today. So it'll say that for each variable you have, that is an array, so you can specify multiple variables if you need to. And then down in the queries array, you can have as many as you wish that it will return in that report. But the query string will see the variable coded there to be replaced. So that's like the template of a report. So if I copy this, let's create our own. So I'll save that there. And so let's create a report to see inactive identities with access. So maybe you have some identities that have access still under their account, but their cloud lifecycle state is inactive. So maybe you want to know about that and perform some actions based on that. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm just going to call it inactive identities with access. We're going to update the description to be something very similar. Inactive. Perfect. I don't need any variables for this one, so I'm going to get rid of those. And then I only need one query for this. All right, so the query string, again, I said this is pretty much the same thing if you're going into search and looking for that. That should look familiar. So I'm going to go into our DevRel tenant here and go to search. I'm going to write this query in search first, get the identities back, and then we'll add it to the CLI report template and list it out there to make sure that we are in fact getting the same data. So you can kind of see I've already entered it in here, but I will type it out again. So we want at accounts I did that wrong. Accounts when disabled is false, and when attributes dot cloud lifecycle state is inactive. So if I run that, there we go. There's our 11 identities, and that is the ones that, again, have accounts that are active, but their cloud lifecycle state is inactive. So I'm just going to copy this here and go back to my code editor, paste that in, and now we have a fully functioning report. So if I go back to the CLI, and I'm going to go back to a little bit more visible here. Okay. If I do sail report, now that new one shows up. And again, as I said, you can up and down through this list, but I'm going to run this report. So it gives me the selected template, the template name, it'll output the query string, query title, and then it gives us the result count. We expected 11. So that's perfect. Let's see. The next thing I want to get into is let's do some stuff with connectors. So what I want to do is show how the CLI can be used in maybe some CI/CD pipelines to be able to, when you make a change to your connector and you made a pull request and you got that change approved, or you want it to be merged in, when you finally merge that into main, maybe you want that connector to be deployed to your tenant automatically. So let's show how that would work with the Sail CLI and GitHub Actions. So I do have a repository already set up for this, and we'll take a look at that here. So first things first, I will just do sailcon list to show you, okay, this is the one I have set up, my project. I've got the ID there, and the connector is on my machine here. And I will open that up in a code editor. And that is also probably very small. I think that'll look okay. So we have the package.json. So this will tell you all about the connector and what dependencies it needs to be running and get working. The connector spec. This is what I'm going to use to show that the CLI does in fact upload it and it does change. So first, let's log back into our Identity Security Cloud and show you this connector. So I'll go to Admin, Connections, Sources, and then I want to, let's see, I believe it's already in here. And there we go. So our connector is my project, and we have that here. So I'll click on that. I'll go into Edit Configuration. So we have the source name, source description. That all should look familiar to you. But the configuration, this is what I was just showing in the code. So we have, to configure this connector, it has authentication, a token, and URL. So what we'll do is just add another field here. Maybe I'll just add client ID, and we'll show how that goes through the pipeline once I merge it into main and gets updated here. So going back to the project, again, this is in the code our section authentication. We have the token and the URL. So what I'll do is I'm going to change this to add another field. We'll call it client ID, and the label will be client ID. All right, so that connector spec's changed, and let's release version 10 of this. Before I do that, I'll walk us through the actual GitHub action. So here, if you're familiar with GitHub Actions, this should look very familiar. If you're not, basically this is just a YAML file, a formatted file that is pretty easily readable, that you can define a set of commands to run, and it will run on an isolated environment. So with that being said, we have to reset up our CLI with the base URL, client ID, and client secret. So you'll see here I'm setting those as environment variables. And these secrets are coming from the repository. The connector alias, this is hard-coded to my project. That's the connector we're working with. And then the CLI version is also dynamic, to where you can put in any value you wish, and it'll download and install that version. So when this is running, or rather we want this to run when the main branch gets updated and the package.json file is changed. So that's what this part is saying. The jobs section is where the actual steps to run the command is set out. So we set up node here, we check out our code for the connector, we check if the version did in fact change. Right here we'll run the npm install, that'll get all of our connectors dependencies. Then we run the pack zip, that'll gather all our connector in a zip file and be ready for upload. The last couple steps here is we download the SailPoint CLI. So you'll see this is a URL to our releases page specifying the CLI version. So that'll download the package for Linux, and we'll install it right there. And then the next command is to actually upload that distribution that it's created from before. And so we'll do sailcon upload -c is the connector alias, so that's my project in this example. And then -f is the actual file we want to upload. Okay, so now we got that. I want to, let's run a get status. So our connector spec in package.json is modified. You wouldn't want to commit to main directly, but for this example, I am going to do that in the essence of time. So we'll do get add and git commit update to version 0.10.0. And we'll push that up. If I go back to GitHub here, if we go to actions, there we go. The action kicked off. So this is running right now, the npm install. So yeah, this is running a GitHub action. The npm install is going right now. Basically, it's getting a base Linux image, installing the CLI, running that command, and there we go. So this last part here, sailcon upload my project. So now we have the latest code in there. If I go back to here and reload this configuration, there's our client ID. So what I've shown you today is just a few ways that you can get started with the SailPoint CLI. The last thing I want to leave you with is our CLI is completely open source. If you have a suggestion or something quite isn't working right, we want to hear about it. Thanks for attending my session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Developer Days.